Though she had sent her last text around 3:47 p.m. to a friend of hers, the police do see the incoming missed calls and texts from Sam, who sent her 9 messages over a half hour from 5:32 to 5:54 p.m. They're actually detailed in the investigative report I mentioned. And Britt, I'm going to have you read them for us.
Okay, and they're each like these really short one-line texts, but I'll just read them in order, okay? Hello? Open the door. What are you doing? I'm getting pissed. Hello? You better have an excuse. What the You have no idea.
So on its face, Sam's story seems to be checking out, at least in regard to him texting her. But police want to talk to other people, namely Ellen's neighbors. Venice Lofts is generally a safe place to live. I mean, it has surveillance cameras, there's a security guard in the lobby by the main entrance, and residents use a key card system. Neighbors of the couple tell police that they didn't hear any commotion that day. No loud noises, no arguments, nothing. So, when looking at all of this is what investigators see. Ellen has no defensive wounds, and she was reportedly alone in the apartment with the door locked from the inside. So by that very night, police come to their conclusion. Ellen died by suicide.
Wait, has the medical examiner even done an autopsy at this point? I mean, I at least have not heard of many suicides where the person has multiple stab wounds.
No, so the autopsy has not been conducted at this point.
So did they find a note or anything that made them double down on this whole suicide theory?
Nope, there was no note. And at this point, it seems like all police know is that Ellen had been prescribed anti-anxiety medications. But again, I don't know what that journal of hers said, if it had something in it that made them kind of go down this path. I don't know what specifically Sam told police about Ellen's state of mind in this day or leading up to it. But what I know is that based on the medical examiner's report, Sam did stay at the scene with some of his family members and friends after finding Ellen. And at some point, police do take him down to the station for a more formal interview, which, by the way, he has a criminal defense attorney with him while he gives a statement. And it's around that time that Sam's dad calls Ellen's parents, Josh and Sandy Greenberg. And as Sandy told us, this is the moment their entire world went dark.
He said, something terrible has happened to Ellie. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, well, we don't know. I said, well, where's the ambulance? And there's a long pause, and I was trying to find my voice because Josh wasn't standing right next to me. He was, in another room. And I'm like, Josh, pick up the phone, pick up the phone, pick up the phone. And they said there is no ambulance. And I still didn't register with me. We really didn't even know what happened, other than they're telling us our child is gone.
As if the death of your only child is not heartbreaking enough, Ellen's parents can't even get to their daughter that night. It is snowing too hard for them to make the 2-hour drive to Philadelphia from where they are in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Early the next morning, this is now January 27th, Josh and Sandy speak with the medical examiner's office over the phone. Sandy tells investigators that she last spoke with Ellen yesterday at around 7 a.m. And Ellen was on her way to work. They had a normal conversation, and Ellen didn't give the impression that anything was wrong. But Sandy and Josh also say that they knew their daughter was struggling with something. Recently, Ellen had been feeling anxious. She'd been feeling insecure and unsure of herself, which was not at all like the bright, hardworking young woman her family knew her to be.
I didn't know what was wrong with my daughter. I did know something was different.
Not long before her death, Ellen had told her parents that she wanted to go home to Harrisburg.
For a visit or something more permanent, like moving back?
Yeah, that isn't totally clear, but she did tell her parents that her wanting to come home had nothing to do with Sam. She actually said it was because of work. And Ellen had been teaching for a few years at this point. And as much as she loved the kids, she said that she just wasn't happy at the school. She was stressed out, she was overwhelmed, which I know enough teachers to know that the way they're treated is a true crime story in its own right. So, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Now, Ellen's parents didn't want her to just up and leave her first big, real job. Her dad was worried that it would mess up her future career prospects. So Ellen made a deal with them and agreed to see a psychiatrist, that Dr. Berman, before making any major decisions. And they figured, this way, whatever she ends up doing, she will at least have talked it out with someone and really given it some serious thought.
So if she moved, though, what would that mean for her and Sam? Was she planning on leaving him, or?
No, like I said, she said that this was all work-related. So despite telling her parents that she wanted to go back to Harrisburg, there's no indication that Ellen was planning to call off her wedding. It was still set for that upcoming August. Literally, save the date cards had gone out in the mail days before this incident. And Ellen had her wedding dress and everything. Ellen's parents tell the medical examiner's office that the relationship between Ellen and Sam seemed good to them. They had no concerns. They didn't know of any physical or verbal abuse. Ellen certainly had never mentioned anything to them. And Josh and Sandy had even taken the couple on vacation to St. Kitts just a month earlier in December 2010. And as the medical examiner's report goes on to say, Josh and Sandy said that as far as they know, Ellen had never attempted to take her own life and had never even expressed any thoughts of making that decision. Although, even though that's in the report, Sandy says that now she doesn't remember the topic of dying by suicide even coming up during this conversation.
To say this was out of left field and unexpected would be a gross understatement.
But it's about to get even more bizarre. Dr. Marlon Osborne, an associate medical examiner, starts Ellen's autopsy at around 9 a.m. that day. And what he finds changes the course of the investigation. As he's conducting the autopsy, Dr. Osborne sees that she doesn't just have multiple stab wounds on her chest. According to the autopsy report, there are 10 more stab wounds on the back of her neck, another in her abdomen, and a big gash on the back of her head.
Wait, and no one at the scene saw any of the wounds to the back of her body? What?
Yeah, it appears that way because there's no mention of them in the initial scene report. Now, some of the wounds are shallow, really shallow, just 0.2 centimeters deep, which for comparison is basically the size of a pencil point. And that actually includes most of the wounds on the back of her neck, but others are much deeper. The final blow, the one that actually killed her, was the stab wound to Ellen's chest, where the knife is still embedded 4 inches deep. Altogether, Dr. Osborne finds 19 stab wounds and the large gash. And here's what's extra interesting. The knife in Ellen's chest has a 5-inch serrated blade with a 5-inch handle, and it's from the knife set in their kitchen. And that's super confusing to me because in the autopsy report, Dr. Osborne describes all of the wounds, even the final blow, as having smooth edges.
What?
Yeah, but there's something else the doctor notices during the autopsy, mostly because they're impossible to miss. There are a bunch of bruises on Ellen's body, on her arms and her legs and her wrists, her abdomen, and they're all in different stages of healing.
So that means that the bruises aren't from just the time she died.
Mm-hmm.
They're from a bunch of different times, over the course of days or weeks.
Exactly. The ME finishes up the autopsy at around 11 a.m. and he makes his ruling. Ellen's death is a homicide. And this is probably not welcome news to the police because as court records show, they had already allowed the crime scene to be compromised beyond repair. This episode was made possible by Squarespace. Squarespace empowers millions of dreamers, makers, and doers by providing them with the tools they need